and gur maith agat Oonagh agus Culligan atá an seo inniu. At the outset, I just want to frame this conversation very clearly. You know, there are so many people who come into our country and contribute immensely, whether it's in our hospitals, in our tech companies, right across our society, in our nursing homes. People make massive contributions. And they come into this country via a structured system, whether it's the work permit system or a visa system, and they contribute immensely. And this country will be lost without them. Many of them I know in my own constituency, and I'm friends with them. So I know the value of the work they do. But without doubt, over the last few years, the Irish people have lost their confidence in the state's ability to handle our asylum processing system, right? Why did the numbers of asylum seekers in Ireland rise from 3,000 approximately per year in 2021-22 to over 12 to 15,000 in the following years?
It was actually, thanks very much for what you said, Deputy, and I agree fully with you. It was actually much smaller in 2021 and 22 because of COVID. The average per year up to 2019, up to and including 2019, was roughly 3,500 over a prolonged period, and then it shrank because of COVID.
Yeah.
And
what was it in 23, 24, say roughly?
In 23 it was roughly 13,000, and then in 24 it rose to 18,500.
So why did we see such a sharp increase in people arriving to the country and claiming asylum specifically?
So there was a rise across Europe in 2022-23, and we've I suppose in years past we haven't got a kind of a proportionate share of that. Okay. In more recent years, we absolutely have got a proportionate share of that.
What was the point of entry for the majority of people who sought asylum in this country?
In the last few years, people present at the IPOs. So, as I was saying earlier, the assumption is that they're coming over the border.
So they're coming over the border. So they may be arriving into Belfast and coming down. Okay. So, do you believe we have an asylum crisis at the moment?
I mean, the proportion, to your earlier point, the proportion of asylum seekers to immigration is I can't remember the exact percentage.
I know it's a much smaller percentage, and I know we have a significant amount of work permits. But that fivefold increase from what the norm was to now over 13, 15, 18,000 per year, that is significant. Do you believe our asylum process, and I understand we have to give asylum seekers due process, and there are people coming from harrowing situations, but do you believe our process is being abused?
Abused is a pejorative kind of word. I mean, what we have an obligation to do is consider everybody's application.
And I accept that, merits, but do you believe that there are people out there that are coming into this country, chancing their arm, seeking asylum?
What we're doing is processing the applications in the fairest.
But I want to know, do you believe people are chancing their arm?
I'm not going to.
Okay, I'll ask you a different question.
I'm not going to use that kind of language, Deputy, because I have a team that has to process applications fairly.
I understand that. Yeah. So what percentage of asylum applications currently are being refused?
So, as we were saying earlier, roughly 78, at the moment, I think it's up to 80% are being refused.
So, I mean, 8 out of 10 asylum applicants in this country right now are being refused. And I understand you can't use the language I've used, but I would call that chance in their arm if 8 out of 10 are not eligible.
We do have a legal obligation, both in Irish law and in international law, to consider all those applications.
100%.
And I can't take a view that prejudices that.
I understand.
What we're trying to do, and the processes that we put in place to accelerate some countries, takes account of a high refusal rate from some countries, and we have an accelerated process for countries.
I understand you have a job to do. You have to process them,
yeah.
but we do. What I'm trying to establish is that we do have a crisis, and then we end up having people who have come here, they get processed through asylum, they end up being told 80% of them, you're not eligible, here's an order to deport. What percentage of people are complying with their deportation orders?
I mean, our view is that most of them are. I might ask Mr. O'Sullivan to come in if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, to come back, and we discussed this a little bit earlier, I mean, our preference would be to get people to leave voluntarily, and as I said, we've 1,600 people, are on our way towards 1,600 people leaving voluntarily this year. Where they don't, we make a deportation order. Our assessment is in most cases people move when they get that order, or in many cases they've moved before that because they know that their case is heading in that direction. We then, in a smaller proportion of cases, take people into custody and remove them either on commercial flights or on charter flights. And the numbers, as we process more and more cases, we are investing more and more resources in scaling all of that up.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, Don. I appreciate that. I want to move on to, I've been doing a lot of work, obviously, on purchase orders and public procurement. Is it the department's intention to publish your purchase orders in a machine-readable format on your website?
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect. I really do appreciate you doing that because we've had great success across many departments in getting them to publish it, and I'm really hopeful to see that from you soon because the Department of Children has been doing it to date, so we were able to garner a lot of information. I guess the most frightening piece of information we gathered was that the top 25 suppliers to the Department of Children and now Justice accounted for, over the last almost decade, the top 25 suppliers of accommodation across 4,248 records accounted for $2 billion and 73 million worth of purchase orders / payments. And, you know, the department has to have serious negotiation power with them. So I would say, and this is just my speak on it, when those contracts come up for renegotiation, the downward price pressure that you should be able to apply to those contracts should be immense. And we should see a drastic saving on those accommodation spots in the future, because we cannot see private interests continuing to profit from a state crisis. The state needs to be able to respond, and I think the City West purchase was the right thing to do because it shows that the state is going to tackle this issue in the long run, and the speed at which applicants are being processed is accelerating. And I think, you know, 80% refusals, again, just on that point, like that shows there is an issue. Like
it wouldn't have been that in every year, just to say that, Deputy, but it is that.
At present, reflecting the high numbers. Yeah. So I will just say that that $2 billion figure across the top 25 suppliers is where the greatest amount of savings can be yielded for the department and for this country. Can
I just maybe get David to give an example, Deputy, because we have achieved quite a degree of savings this year. I think it's north of 50 million. Yeah.
Effectively taking your point, Deputy, we've introduced a rate card to negotiate exceptionally hard and give teams guidelines around how to do that.
When did you introduce that?
We introduced it at the start of the summer.
And say, for the last 2 or 3 years, David, were you in charge of the IPAS contracts?
Yes.
Okay, so like 1/5 of them, according to the CNAG, had planning. Half of them had contracts. I mean, if I put up a modular backyard unit tomorrow, the council would be down on me like a ton of bricks. Why is it that ye have been able to hand out these contracts with no proper procurement, on an expression of interest, with very few fire certs, very little compliance? Why have you been allowed to do that?
I mean, just briefly, Deputy, I mean, there was an emergency. So like 2022, 2023, the state was dealing with north of 100,000 people being accommodated, both in IPAS and in Ukraine. So like it was an emergency that had to be dealt with. I think the team did a really, really good job in getting people accommodated, and it had to be done.
I think the rule book went out the window, though.
But they're now in a process.
The rule book went out the window, the checkbook was out, and anyone who had any accommodation was being paid head over heels to take the people that were coming in.
It's your own point, Deputy, actually. The state wasn't in a position to do this, so it had to rely on the private sector. And certainly the providers had a whip hand in the negotiations.
But do you believe over the last 2 or 3 years the state has been fleeced?
Over the last 6 months, we brought in a rate card that has reduced the price on the contracts renewed, and it's over 100 contracts that we've renewed in the last 6 months or so, and the price has been reduced by 23%. We are using our negotiation.
We had the HSE. We had the HSE here last week, and we saw that COVID was a crisis. They relaxed the rules, and 15 million went to a company, and now 7 million is not recoverable, and it's all a disaster. We have Justice in here today, and I know it was Children before, but we have Justice here today, and billions being paid out on accommodation to manage a crisis, and it was a crisis. It's okay. We can justify it. Whereas I have crises in my constituency. I have children who can't get SNAs. I have children who can't get supports, and you know those are crises, and we're not able to take out the checkbook. So I have a huge issue with that.
I don't want to diminish or disrespect anyone's individual crisis, but both COVID and Ukraine have been global crises, and the state had to respond. So I just want to make one last question. I do believe that
in the last few months, there's been a marked change in the department. Since it has gone into justice, I believe that there has been a policy shift. Things are definitely, you know, what I'm seeing on the ground is there is not as many of these contracts being given out. Compliance is becoming rigorous. Things are improving, and that reflects the state's ramping up its response. I guess my question is it true that people are suing the Minister for Justice for not giving them IPAS contracts?
There are a number of such cases, Deputy, but you'll understand they're before the courts, so I can't go into detail on them, but there are a number of such cases. Yeah.
But so because Minister O'Callaghan has clamped down on the handing out of IPAS contracts over the last few months, people are suing him.
As I say, matters before the courts, Chair, so I don't really want to go into any detail.
Okay, thank you.
David Dolan.